The first thing Olivia noticed was that her son had stopped asking questions. Not the big questions children usually ask about stars or dinosaurs or why people cry during movies. Those had disappeared months ago. Now 7-year-old Ethan sat quietly beside her in waiting rooms on city buses and at the tiny kitchen's table in their cramped apartment, carrying a silence no child should ever learn. And somehow that silence hurt more than hunger. "Mom," Ethan whispered. One cold evening as they stood outside a grocery store counting coins. "You don't have to pretend anymore. I know we're poor." The words shattered something inside her. Olivia forced a smile anyway. "We're not poor, baby. We're just having a hard season." But children always knew the truth. She saw it in Ethan's eyes every time he noticed her skipping meals, every time the landlord knocked, every time she worked, late cleaning office buildings while he pretended not to be tired sitting in the hallway with a coloring book. Life hadn't always looked like this. 3 years earlier, Olivia had been married, living in a modest home in Chicago with dreams that felt possible. Then came the accident that took her husband Daniel on a rainy highway 2 weeks before Ethan's 4th birthday. One phone call. That was all it took for her entire world to collapse. The grief alone nearly destroyed her. The bills finished the job. Now at 32, she worked 2 jobs just to survive. Sleep became a luxury. Hope became dangerous. And yet every morning, Ethan still hugged her before school and said, "You're my favorite person." That was the only reason she kept going. That Friday night, Olivia was leaving her second cleaning shift downtown when Ethan tugged gently on her sleeve. "Mom." "Yes, sweetheart." He pointed across the street toward the glowing windows of one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables covered in white linen, while luxury cars lined the curb outside. "I want to know what rich people food tastes like." Olivia's chest tightened instantly. Normally, she would distract him, change the subject, promise burgers another day. But something about the exhaustion in his little voice broke her heart. She checked her wallet. $11. Not enough for appetizers in a place like that. Still, before she could answer, a deep voice spoke behind them. "Then maybe you two should come inside." Olivia turned quickly. The man standing there looked like someone who belonged in a magazine cover, rather. Then on a freezing sidewalk. Tailored black coat, silver watch, calm gray eyes carrying the quiet confidence of someone used to being listened to. She recognized him immediately. Alexander Grant, tech billionaire, investor, one of the wealthiest men in Illinois, the kind of man who appeared on television, discussing billion-dollar companies while ordinary people struggled to pay rent. Olivia stepped back instinctively. "We're fine, thank you." But Ethan stared wide-eyed. "You're really rich?" Alexander blinked once before laughing softly. "I guess that depends who you ask." Olivia grabbed Ethan's hand gently. "Sorry, he doesn't mean." "It's okay," Alexander interrupted. Then he looked directly at Ethan. "Have you ever eaten steak?" Ethan shook his head. "Lobster?" Another shake. Alexander smiled faintly. "Then tonight sounds like a good night for firsts." Olivia immediately stiffened. Pride rose fast inside her chest. "We can't accept charity." Something flickered in Alexander's expression at that word. "Good," he said quietly, "because I wasn't offering charity. I was offering dinner." For a moment, nobody moved. Cars passed. Cold wind rushed between buildings. Somewhere nearby, music echoed through downtown streets. Then Ethan looked up at her with hopeful eyes she hadn't seen in months. And Olivia said, "Yes." Inside the restaurant felt unreal. Soft piano music drifted through the air. Waiters moved like dancers between tables. Ethan stared at everything with pure wonder, trying not to touch anything expensive. Olivia, meanwhile, felt painfully out of place in her thrift store coat and worn shoes. But Alexander treated them like they belonged there. No pity, no awkwardness, just kindness. He ordered dishes Olivia couldn't pronounce and desserts. Ethan photographed on an old cracked phone before eating. For the first time in years, Olivia watched her son laugh without restraint, and it nearly made her cry. "You don't do this often, do you?" she asked Alexander quietly once. Ethan became distracted watching chefs through the open kitchen. Alexander swirled his drink thoughtfully. Not anymore. There was something lonely about him. She noticed it immediately. People probably surrounded him constantly. Yet isolation clung to him like smoke. "Why us?" she asked. He's hesitated before answering. "Because 10 years ago, someone fed me when I had nothing." Olivia looked surprised. Alexander leaned back slightly. "Most people think I was born rich. I wasn't. My mother raised me alone after my father disappeared. We lived in shelters for a while." Olivia stared at him. "I know what it feels like," he continued softly. "When your kid wants something simple and you can't give it to them." Suddenly the billionaire across from her didn't seem untouchable anymore. He seemed human, and somehow that mattered more than the expensive dinner. By the end of the night, Ethan had fallen half asleep against Olivia's shoulder. Alexander walked them outside himself. Snow had started falling lightly over the city. "Thank you," Olivia said sincerely. "Tonight meant more than you know." Alexander nodded once. Then Ethan mumbled sleepily, "Can we see you again?" Olivia nearly died of embarrassment, but Alexander smiled. "I'd like that." Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. Alexander became part of their lives, not in the flashy billionaire way newspapers would have loved. He didn't buy Olivia a mansion or shower them with gifts. Instead, he showed up quietly. He attended Ethan's school play when Olivia had to work late. He fixed their broken heater without mentioning the cost. He brought groceries by accident whenever his assistant supposedly overordered. And slowly, Olivia realized something heartbreaking. Alexander wasn't helping them because he pied them. He helped because he needed them too. For the first time in years, someone laughed in his penthouse apartment. Tiny sneakers appeared near his front door. Ethan dragged him into board games and superhero movies and messy pancake breakfasts. The lonely billionaire who had everything suddenly looked happiest sitting on the floor building Lego towers. And Olivia saw it. Saw the sadness he hid behind expensive suits. Saw how often he ate dinner alone before they came along. Saw how deeply he cared beneath all the walls. One evening after Ethan fell asleep on Alexander's couch during movie night, Olivia stood quietly in the kitchen washing dishes. "You know," she said softly, "he talks about you constantly." Alexander leaned against the counter. "I talk about him too." She smiled faintly. Then silence settled between them. Comfortable, warm, dangerous. "I should probably go," she whispered, but neither of them moved. Finally, Alexander spoke. "I spent years thinking success would make me feel less empty." Olivia looked up slowly. "But money only makes loneliness quieter," he admitted. "It doesn't remove it." Something inside her cracked open hearing those words because she understood loneliness too. Not the kind caused by empty rooms, the kind caused by carrying pain nobody else could see. Alexander stepped closer carefully, as if afraid she might disappear. "You changed my life, Olivia." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "No," she whispered shakily. "You changed ours." He shook his head gently. "You and Ethan reminded me what matters." And for the first time since her husband died, Olivia allowed herself to imagine happiness without guilt. Months later, Ethan stood between them at a small charity event. Alexander funded for struggling single parents across Chicago. Hundreds of families filled the community center. Free meals, winter coats, childcare resources, real help, not publicity. As Olivia watched exhausted mothers cry with relief, she finally understood the ripple effect of kindness. One dinner, that was all it started with. One simple act between strangers on a cold sidewalk. And now dozens of families were being helped because one man chose compassion. Instead of indifference, Ethan squeezed both their hands proudly. "Mom," he whispered, smiling up at Alexander. "Remember when I said I wanted rich people food?" Olivia laughed through tears. "Yeah, baby." Ethan grinned. "I think rich people food tastes better when kind people share it." And standing there together, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and second chances, Olivia realized something beautiful. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones with perfect lives. Sometimes they are simply the ones willing to sit beside our pain long enough to remind us we don't have to carry it alone anymore.